Dr. Yaron Brook, welcome to Toronto.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Pleasure to have you here. The Ayn Rand Institute. It's involved in university education, has a lot of programs for college students, university students. Do you have much participation in Canada in these programs?
We have some. So one of the things we do actually for high school students, more so in Canada, we run these programs where we offer teachers Ayn Rand's books if they promise to teach the books, and we offer them to all high schools in Canada. And we get quite a good response. Thousands of books get shipped to Canada every year for teachers to teach the books. And we also run our essay contest here in Canada and have a prize for the best Canadian essay, and that has significant Canadian participation every year. We used to have some pretty active student groups here in Canada. I remember the days where the University of Toronto was maybe one of our most active campus clubs. I think in the early 2000s and maybe even in the 90s, but unfortunately, in recent years, it's been less active. I think at one of the universities in British Columbia, we have a fairly active student group. So it kind of ebbs and flows depending on the students and how active they are.
So you're here to talk about the morality of capitalism in your book with Don Watkins, Free Market Revolution. What does it say about society, Western society, built on the ideals and fundamentals of capitalism, that you have to go around to universities preaching the morality of capitalism?
Well, it shows the bankruptcy of Western civilization and really the decline that we're living through of the West. There's no question capitalism is in decline in the West. It's considered a dirty word today in many Western countries. In the United States, you can at least talk about capitalism somewhat, and there's still some audience. But as you travel in Europe and elsewhere, there's a declining interest in this. They don't even know what it is. They certainly have only negative views of what capitalism is. So it is really sad, given that all the material wealth, we've got a beautiful background of downtown Toronto here, and this university, all of this was built because of the wealth created through capitalism. All of this was built because of the innovation, the creativity of businessmen who most of our culture today condemn and put down and seek to destroy.
And people have forgotten their roots, more or less.
Well, they've forgotten the history, and they've forgotten the history not just because they're forgetful, but because they are taught the wrong history. They are taught a false history. They are taught that capitalism destroyed rather than what capitalism built. They are taught about all the so-called evils of capitalism. They're taught the Industrial Revolution, all the bad stuff about the Industrial Revolution, rather than the great virtues. And nobody today knows, for example, that before the Industrial Revolution, everybody was poor. Mm-hmm. The life expectancy was under 40, and life was really, really miserable. And that all the good stuff that they have around them today is a consequence of capitalism and the Industrial Revolution, and they're not taught that. And my argument is, an argument we make in the book, is that they're not taught that for a reason, and they don't want to accept these ideas for a reason, and that is that it goes against capitalism, goes against the moral code that they have. It goes against the innermost deeply held beliefs, and they reject history, they reject the science of economics, they reject fact and truth in order to hold on to their morality.
Now, speaking of the morality of capitalism, the morality that it's fighting, the specific name of what it's fighting is
altruism, and altruism is the morality that has dominated the West for the last 2,000 years. It has dominated the West through religion and through all our secular institutions, our secular philosophies. It's the morality that says that your life is now fundamentally yours. It's the morality that says that you are born with a moral obligation to your fellow man, to people who are suffering, to the poor, that your moral obligation is to be selfless, that's being self-interested, pursuing your own life, thinking about yourself first, are vices, are bad things, that your moral obligation is all to others. Altruism is otherism. It's not about benevolence. It's not about being nice. It's not even about being charitable. It's about sacrificing. It's about, taking away from your own values, sacrificing your own values for the sake of your neighbor. And that is a morality, a moral code that's completely inconsistent with capitalism. It's a moral code that's inconsistent with freedom and liberty. And as a consequence, the more people take seriously this morality of altruism, the more statist, the more controlled we become. And you see this throughout human history. As individualism, in a sense, as individualism goes, so does freedom. When there is no individualism, like in the Dark Ages, then there is no freedom. When there's a rebirth for a little bit of individualism, like there was in the Enlightenment and the Industrial Revolution, you get some freedom. We are now in an era of a decline of individualism, a decline of the idea of self-interest, and a real rise in the morality of altruism.
So even though we've had, well, since the time of Abraham and his first sacrifice, or attempted sacrifice, we have had increments where we are able to reap the benefits of capitalism. What would the world be like if, for the last 2,500 years, we would have had capitalism? Or can you project into the future?
I can't project that. I mean, it is so beyond anything we could imagine. You'd have to be a science fiction writer to write it. Never mind 2,500 years. What if in the last 200 years or the last 100 years, we'd have capitalism? What if at the end of the 19th century, we would have embraced capitalism and made it more consistently free and made it more consistent rather than turning against it with all the regulations and the taxes and the government intervention and the redistribution of wealth? What if the United States had stayed capitalist and maybe even strengthened its capitalist institutions at the beginning of the 20th century? It's unimaginable. I mean, all you have to think about is the innovation that came about during the 19th century. We went from everybody going to sleep when it was dark because there was no lighting source, to kerosene, where at least you could have some lighting, to electricity. I mean, that is an unimaginable revolution in the span of 40 years. Think about the revolution. It means that you go from horse and buggy to railway, to automobiles, to airplanes, all in a span of 30, 40 years.
And it didn't come about because of people trying to work for others. It came about from the profit motive.
Quite the contrary. That is, and it didn't come about because of government. It came about because industry was left free, individuals were left free to pursue their own values and to pursue profit. It's all about profit, and it's not just profit. It's about the self-interested pursuit of knowledge, the self-interested passion and challenge. Thomas Edison might not have done everything he did for profit, although he wanted to profit from it, and he did during certain periods of his life. But he did it out of a personal passion, a personal, desire to learn and to study and to have knowledge and to find out the truth. Not out of a desire to help mankind, not out of a sacrificial selflessness. He was being self-interested, rationally self-interested, trying to pursue his values. And that's true of all innovators and all entrepreneurs. They are out there for themselves.
Now, the invisible hand of Adam Smith says that people would naturally benefit from capitalism, although you're saying that shouldn't be the ultimate goal of the capitalist, is not to benefit others, but for his own productive effort.
True, and even Adam Smith said that's not his reason. The reason the baker bakes the bread is for his own benefit. But he said, well, that's morally suspect, but the reason it's okay is because when you aggregate it all through the invisible hand, everybody's better off. And my argument is, yes, everybody who's willing to work and be productive is better off. But that's not the moral justification. The moral justification is the baker's life. The baker owes me nothing. The baker pursuing his own values, the baker trying to make a profit, the baker trying to have a good life, the baker trying to make money to feed his family and himself and to make as much money as he can so he can feed them with the best food that he can and live in the best house that he can. That's the moral justification. He's taking care of his own life. He's taking care of himself and the people he loves. He's pursuing his values in pursuit of his own happiness. That's the moral justification. Yes, if everybody behaved that way and you aggregate it across everybody, yeah, everybody's better off. But that can't be the moral justification. The moral justification is not society. Society doesn't exist. All that exists are individuals. Society is only the conglomeration of all those individuals. But you can't have every individual committing a vice to achieve a virtue. But if everybody is virtuous, i.e. everybody pursuing their own self-interest, yeah, everybody else is also better off. Because the way in a capitalist society you achieve virtue is by trading. And trade, by definition almost, is a win-win relationship. Voluntary trade is always win-win. So I'm better off, I'm making more money, but you're better off because you got a better product that you were willing to give me the money for.
Now, the collapse of the financial institutions in 2008 allowed President Obama's administration to have massive spending programs. What do you see as the best way to get around those things? Would it be, for example, now maybe pie in the sky, but would it be, for example, to eliminate reserve banking, fractional reserve? Or would it be to get rid of the Fed? Or would it be just to rein in control from another sequestering?
Well, I mean, there are lots of solutions, right? Because government is so big today, anything we do to shrink it is a good thing. I'm not against fractional reserve banking. I believe that in a free market there would be fractional reserve banking, but I am against the Fed. I think the Fed is a disastrous institution, responsible for the financial crisis to a large extent.
Even though the Fed is a private institution created by the banks?
No, the Fed is not a private institution. It wasn't created by the banks. The Fed was created by government. It was created by government. It's a government institution. The chairman of the Fed is appointed by the President of the United States. He gets approval from Congress. He can be impeached by Congress. The whole Board of Governors is determined by the government. Where the Fed's profits go? Do they go to the banks? No. The Fed's profits go to the Treasury. The Fed is a government institution through and through. And it's a bad institution. And even if it was private, it still has a government monopoly. So even if it was private, it would be public. It would be government, right? So you got to abolish the Fed and allow for competition in currencies, allow for competition in the creation of money. Government shouldn't have a monopoly power over any of those things. Government shouldn't be involved in economics. But there's so many things government should do. Eliminate regulations. Do away with all the regulations Obama's passed and Bush passed and all presidents have passed really since the turn of the century. Get rid of the entitlement state. Stop redistributing wealth. Phase out Social Security. Phase out Medicare. Phase out Medicaid. All of these things would help. Is anybody willing to do any of them? No. I mean, it's not even on the table. And of course, to fight Obama, the first thing that should have happened is that all of us who believe in free markets, we should have stood up and say, this crisis wasn't caused by capitalism. This crisis was caused by government. This crisis was caused by government policies. And the solution to prevent these kind of crises is a free market. The solution is to get rid of all these regulations and controls and big government and intrusive government. So there's a lot that can be done in terms of practical politics, a lot that can be done, a lot that should be done, and almost nothing that we have a chance of doing.
Do you see any value in some of the movements in the United States, particularly called like the Tea Party's influence on the Republican Party?
Absolutely. Anytime anybody stands up and says enough is enough, there's too much government over my life, there's too much controls, that's a good thing. Whether they have an agenda, whether they have a program to actually bring about change, I'm doubtful, unfortunately. Whether they have the intellectual firepower to bring about that change, I'm doubtful. But that just means we need to help them. That just means we need to supply them with better ideas and more intellectual firepower so that they can make those ideas real. But the very fact that they stood up and said, you Republicans, you're wimps, you're compromising too much, we believe in limited government, we believe in the Constitution, that in and of itself is a positive.
We're on a university campus here at the University of Toronto, and historically historically, universities have been hotbeds for dissent, protest, and today most of the dissent and protest is very much of a left-wing, socialist, Marxist, even terrorist supporting nature.
Sure.
So is that why you've chosen, the Ayn Rand Institute has chosen as its point of attack, universities?
Well, the fundamental is not so much that. The fundamental is that the universities is where the cultural agenda gets set. It's where ideas are being debated. It's where the left has won. Mm-hmm. The left has won globally. And the left won because they took over the universities, because they dominate the discussion in the universities. This is why the radicals on the universities today are all leftists, because everything's left on the university. If you want to be a radical, you're going to be more leftist than everybody else. There is no right wing on universities. There is no pro-capitalist agenda on the universities anyway. It's very, very rare, even in the United States. But this is where the debate is happening. This is where people's ideas get shaped. There's a period between, age 14 and age 26, 30, where people's ideas are shaped. After that, it's too late. Yeah. Before that, it's too early. So if you're going to have an impact on the culture, you've got to impact young people. And the place where the young people come in order to get themselves educated is here. And if we leave campuses to the left and abandon the students and just say, we accept that it's going to be a bastion of, then we've lost a cultural fight. We need to be on campuses. We need to be engaged in the debate. We need to try to place professors on these campuses. But if the professors are not there, then we need to be there through clubs, through speeches, through talks, any way we can. Book distributions, we need to be on campuses to suggest to these students who are searching, who are for the first time in their lives using their minds independently, that there is an alternative to the leftist propaganda that their teachers are teaching them.
Recently in the news, there's been some activity over in Israel and Syria, where Israel has been accused of bombing Hezbollah missiles passing through Syria to go to Lebanon. Now, of course, you are born and raised in Israel.
Yes.
You were in the Israeli military.
Yep.
You obviously have an opinion about what's going on over there. I don't think it's a favorable one to the way that Israel is fighting the fight, is it?
No, I think Israel is much too weak, much too apologetic, much too reactive instead of proactive. It is ridiculous that they allow the Hezbollah to arm themselves in southern Lebanon and just waiting for them to launch another attack on Israel before Israel responds. Israel should preemptively destroy the entire military complex of the Hezbollah. It has the capacity to do it. What it needs is the will and the moral courage to do it.
Should it go into Iran?
Well, yes, absolutely. I mean, I don't think it should go in with ground troops. I don't think it's too far away. But yes, I think Israel should be bombing, should destroy whatever nuclear capabilities Iran might have today. It should destroy them. It's unacceptable to be a sovereign country and have another country threaten you with annihilation and just sit back and let them build the weapons that make it possible, that annihilation possible. It is the responsibility of the Israeli government to do whatever is necessary to protect its own citizens. And if that involves bombing Iran, then they have to do it. It's a morally essential that they do it. You know, the government has only one responsibility: the protection of the individual rights of its own citizens. It's to protect them from criminals and fraudsters and from foreign invasion. And the Israeli government is defaulting on that one responsibility by not dealing with Hezbollah, not dealing with Hamas in the Gaza Strip, and not dealing with the Iranians. They need to be much more aggressive. And when they are aggressive, which is really interesting, people leave them alone.
Now,
when they're weak is when they get attacked.
No, there's no doubt, I think, that they're weak because they're using that sacrificial philosophy to actually feed and put electricity and water into Gaza, and yet the Gazans repay them by firing Qassam missiles into their territory almost every day.
It's unbelievable. It's one of the best illustrations of altruism in foreign policy. You know, I'm going to sacrifice myself. I'm going to help my enemies. Not just am I going to turn the other cheek. I'm going to literally help love my enemy, right? And they're taking the Sermon on the Mount seriously. And they are providing with electricity and with food and with supplies. They're feeding and clothing. The same people are then going and launching missiles into Israel and trying to kill Israelis. Luckily, they're very incompetent, and their missiles are pretty primitive, and they're not managing to kill a lot of Israelis. But that doesn't matter. Their intent is to destroy Israel. Their intent is to kill Israel. The last thing Israel should be doing is supplying them with anything. There should be a barricade. They should not allow one electron to pass from Israel into the Gaza Strip. If the Egyptians want to feed them, if the Egyptians want to supply them with electricity, then so be it. But Israel should take a clear-cut stand that they will not provide for their enemy. But it's stronger than that. Israel ultimately should destroy the enemy. That is, Israel needs to destroy the military capability of Hamas in the Gaza Strip, and that means doing whatever's necessary to destroy that threat. And of course, they're not doing that, and they haven't really. Israel hasn't really had a backbone in terms of self-defense, in terms of protecting the lives of its own citizens. Probably since the early 1980s. They've lost that, and they become like America. You know, we fight wars to help our enemies. We fight wars to bring the good life to people who hate our guts. We fight wars not to win. We haven't won a war since World War II. And we send our, American kids, we send them to die on the battlefield for the sake of bringing democracy and bringing sewer systems and bringing schools to countries that have no appreciation for any of those values and who hate us at the end of the day. And it's a travesty. American foreign policy is almost as bad as Israeli foreign policy. The only reason Israeli is worse is because the threat there is existential, whereas the threat to America, is relatively minor as compared to the threat to Israel.
Now,
but both follow the same fundamentally altruistic foreign policy agenda, or what I would call a crony foreign policy, a foreign policy that serves certain pressure groups but doesn't serve the self-interest of American citizens, doesn't serve to protect the individual rights of American citizens.
Dr. Yaron Brook, thank you very much.
Thank you.